Hey everybody, how's it going? This is your old pal Auticus today, and we're going to go over the latest in the old world news. So if you haven't been following along, Games Workshop released a developer's diary. That kind of gives us some more information about the old world. It tells us who can we expect to participate, and it also shows us where it is going to be located. Now, having had more data released, this has been met with responses both good and bad, and there have been a lot of responses complaining about the complainer, so to speak. But I kind of wanted to delve into what those complaints are and what I think those are coming from, as well as address one of the big issues that I keep seeing repeated over and over on forums or on Facebook groups, Discords, etc., which is if the balance is bad, the fan community will just correct it like they've always done. Okay. So let's go ahead and look at the announcement, and let's see what we know for sure now with the old world. All right. So this is the development diary. I'll go ahead and see if I can make this a little bit bigger so you can see it. All right. So over the last few weeks, we've shown you previews of new models, shown off freshly painted examples of returning favorites, and revealed many more hints of what you can expect from Warhammer The Old World. This week, we want to take a look at which factions will feature most prominently in the game. The game itself will be set firmly within the Old World itself, the lands between the coast of Bretonnia to the west and the World's Edge Mountains to the east, during the decades immediately before the Great War against Chaos and the Siege of Prague. All right, so it's by calling it the Old World, some people assumed that meant it was just going to be Warhammer Fantasy, the Old World. This actually means it's set in the Old World. It's set over in the Empire. And now we have a pretty much an exact time frame. We know exactly when this is going to happen, which is going to be able to set them up to do something like Horus Heresy, where we advance the timeline in the past and start introducing like demons, etc. later on. Much of the action in the first wave of books and supplements takes place in and around the Border Princes, the barrier lands between the Empire and Orc territories. So here are your nine factions. So we have the Empire of Man, we have Dwarves, we have Bretonnia, Wood Elves, High Elves, Orcs and Goblins, Warriors of Chaos, Beastmen, and the Tomb Kings. These armies will have rules published alongside the launch of the Old World and will be the pivotal players in the events covered in narrative expansions and supplements. Fans of these armies can also look forward to some shiny new miniatures that will accompany the return of many classic kits. All right, so these are going to be the 9 factions that are going to get the initial love. This kind of just goes over the history, showing you what's going on in the Old World at that point. But here's the key one. What about the other factions? Because that set off a lot of people. So we know, and they give you a list of the factions that they plan on supporting but don't yet have rules. These legacy faction army lists will be made available as free PDFs as a service to fans who have these classic armies on their shelf so they can bring them to battle for old time's sake. We don't plan to publish rules for Warhammer Age of Sigmar miniatures except for those units that were part of the game and setting during the final edition of Warhammer Fantasy Battles. All right, this kind of gives you a summary of what those armies might have been doing at that time period. Cool. So let's unpack this. All right, so people are, some people are happy, some people are upset. Some people are upset that people are upset. It's the internet. We call this a Tuesday. Well, today's Wednesday, but we call this a Wednesday, right? So when we look at what the actual complaints are, first of all, you have to understand what the product is that is being sold. This is more like a historical thing. At least that's what they're trying to push, a historical narrative game like Horus Heresy. As such, it's going to adhere to historical rules. Just like when you're playing historicals in the sense where you're playing Romans or you're playing Carthaginians or you're playing the British. In those games, you don't have the British Empire circa 1650 battling Vikings. Though in Warhammer Fantasy, you would often see stuff like that because there was a setting, but most pickup games didn't care about the setting. So you could have lizardmen from Lustria, and they're hanging out over in the Empire for some reason. This is not going to allow that. Well, at least in It will allow it in that you're going to have rules, but the narrative is not going to focus on that. And I think that that's reasonable. I think that that's reasonable, and I'm personally fine with that because of course, I enjoy narrative games. I enjoy narrative campaigns, so having a consistency like that is good to me. They're giving us free PDFs for everything else. I think that's also good. But now here's where I understand where the anger is coming from. And so if you're I'm a part of a lot of different groups. I'm sure a lot of you are part of a lot of different groups. There's Conquest groups, there's Ninth Age groups that I'm in, there's Kings of War groups that I'm in, there's old Warhammer 6th edition groups that I'm in. And this is the topic of the week. Actually, it's been talked about quite a bit. Because I think anyone who knows anything about gamers knows that the allure of Games Workshop games was never really their rules, but the giant community. The ability to get a pickup game wherever and whenever you want is why it's so successful, and why the rules are always secondary, and why people give the bad balance a pass. So if you're a Kings of War player, or if you're a Ninth Age player, you know that the game you love may lose some players. I don't think that it'll kill them altogether, but it's definitely going to have an impact on your player attendance and whatnot. And if that's one of your driving priorities, is having a large number of people to play against, certainly this is something you're looking at. Now, when I look at all the people complaining about their faction not being represented, almost everyone I've seen who has given any context, and all the ones that have complained who I know are, because I've seen their other posts, are primarily competitive style gamers or pickup style gamers who are concerned about the balance of their army. And I think that's also reasonable. Games Workshop has never, in the past 15 years, had a good track record. And by a good track record, I mean every single time they've done this, it's been bad in terms of balance. The last time Games Workshop was able to produce a rule set that wasn't horribly balanced, that lasted a while, was Ravening Hordes in 6th edition. And that lasted about 3 years or so. Some people will argue that it lasted the entirety of 6th edition. I don't agree. There's not a real good way to gauge that, however, because balance is different, or the threshold of what you accept as good balance is different from person to person. So trying to argue with someone over what is or is not balanced is a useless argument, because they probably have a different opinion of what that threshold is compared to you. So you're just going to talk circles around each other, which to me is useless. But from a generally overwhelming standpoint, Age of Sigmar and the 40K indexes that they've released over the years since 2015 or so have been good for about 1 or 2 months until the actual army books come out. And then they're usually quite poor compared to the books that, or the armies that have actual books. Now, we don't know if every individual army in the old world is getting its own book. This article did not say that. It just said that there's going to have published rules that come out alongside the old world. That could be in a big campaign book like Tamarcon, a big Forge World book with all the rules in it for the actual armies. Should they choose to do that, that would actually be pretty interesting to me, because it would keep those armies together, grouped in the same type of power level. In fact, Blackfire Pass, or whatever it was called, that was supposed to be the second book to Tamarcon. And the very last Games Day that existed, they were talking about Blackfire Pass. And then, of course, it never happened, and the Horse Heresy happened instead. But that was always kind of their vision, to release these campaign books, or Forge World to release these campaign books that were kind of like this. Maybe not historical at the time, but kind of like this. So anyhow, the complaints you're hearing are from people who want to play in tournaments or leagues or pickup games where they want to show up with, say, their Dark Elves and play, but they don't want to get rock bottomed through the table, because the free PDF lists are almost always bad. Almost always bad. Age of Sigmar, none of those PDF lists stood up to any of the published books. They were just really bad. Like Tomb Kings and Bretonnia both had rules in Age of Sigmar, and no one played them because they were just really, really bad. I did a supplement back when I was still writing for AOS for the fan community, I did a Bretonnium book, and to bring them up to speed required powering them up quite significantly. They just weren't good. So that is the root of the complaining, okay? And I think that it's reasonable. Like if you're a Dark Elf player, or you're a Lizardman player, or you're a Vampire Counts player, or a Skaven player, or any of the other factions being omitted, you know that for the next, I mean, we don't even have the old world. This thing's been out for what, 5 years? We don't even have it yet. And so they know there's another endless number of years after the time that the old world even comes out that they're not going to have proper rules. So that's disappointing to them. Now here's a couple follow-up questions, a couple follow-up thoughts. Chew on these for a while, maybe leave some comments what you think. There's a lot of people saying, well, I'm a Dark Elf player, and so because there's no Dark Elves, I'm just going to stick with the Ninth Age. Peace out. I think that'll happen for a little while. However, like Age of Sigmar showed us, if there is any forward momentum with the old world when it comes out at your local area, those people who play Dark Elves or Skaven that said, I'm not going to play because I don't have rules, I'm willing to bet you they will come around and pick up a list that's supported. Because again, the kernel of their argument is they don't want to play a weak list. They don't want to play a list that's not supported and isn't getting new models. Some of them isn't getting new models and who's easy to beat on the table. So I have a feeling they will come around and buy new models and pick up a new army, because the allure of GW games is the massive community. People play these games because of the massive community. Their investment is safe. And I have a feeling, and this is just my prediction, so I'm using my super psychic powers, because Age of Sigmar worked the same way. Everyone fled it, but then over the next couple of years, they started flocking back, and the community built itself back up again. I have a feeling it's going to be the same with this. You're going to start to see some people return, knowing that there's going to probably be a book 2 with their forces. So that's my prediction on that, and that's some old world news. The last thing I want to talk about real quick was, I've been seeing this commonly enough in responses to want to talk about it, or at least make a side comment on it, and that is, well, if the old world balance is bad, then the community will just pick it up like they've been, and they'll just fix it. Okay, I don't believe that that's remotely even possible at all. Not that the community can't do it. Obviously, the community can do it. We have proven time and time again. I wrote the first AOS comp when there were no points. I was one of the 4. I wrote Azir. We have Ninth Age has shown up. We have Warhammer Army projects that's shown up. So we have War Master Revolution. There are a number of fan-made point systems that do really well. In fact, I'm going to tell you, looking and having played most, if not all of those now, they all did a better job than Games Workshop did in terms of balance. It all felt really good. Whereas GW games, you have to beg your opponent, please don't take that broken thing, because I don't want to play that type of game today. So I think the fan community can absolutely knock it out of the park with balanced points. So people say it's not possible. That's just not true. But again, we're not talking about the knife edge of 50-50 balance. We're talking about a game where I deploy 2,000 points, you deploy 2,000 points, and we're both playing the same game. And you're not beating me in 2 turns, or I'm not beating you in 2 turns because you took just a balls bad list. We're not talking about that knife's edge of balance. The problem is players, especially when the prime motivator is pickup games and in tournaments, which that's to me the prime motivator of Games Workshop games throughout my life, watching all the people I know, watching all the people I talk to online. The number of narrative campaign players is fractionally smaller than pickup gamers. Pickup gamers make up the largest mass. They don't want anything that's not official and will not allow anything that's not official. So if you think that someone's going to come around and create the fan-based Dogs of War book and you're just going to get to use it, you're going to be disappointed. The only way that'll work is if you have a friendly group that you can talk them into letting you do that. But like if you're thinking you're just going to walk down to the store and you're going to be able to use that, that's a big no. I don't think in most places. I don't know your region or area. Maybe you have reasonable people that aren't going to jump on you for that. But most places, the whole allure is that you're playing Warhammer as Games Workshop intended it, for good and for bad. So that's my thoughts and opinions on the latest news. Let me know if you have any thoughts or opinions of your own in the comment section. If you liked it, give me a like. If you want to subscribe for more, please hit the subscribe button. I will be bringing us more wargaming news and battle reports. Until then, next time, I will talk to you later. Have a good one.